This recording is from Chapter 8. It is on the specific section of memory problems. A quote I like about memory, or it's actually a quote from the textbook, and which we discussed in the previous lecture if you listened to that on defining memory. Memory is the set of processes used to encode, store, and retrieve information over different periods of time. So now that we've defined memory, let's look at some problems with memory. The first is amnesia, which I'm sure we all have an idea of what amnesia is, but it is the loss of long-term memory that occurs as the result of a disease, a physical trauma, or a psychological trauma. There are two types of amnesia. Anterograde amnesia means you can't remember new information. Although you can remember past information and events that happened prior to your injury, damage to the brain has resulted in the inability to transfer information from short-term to long-term memory. So essentially, you can't remember new information. Things that are presented to you after your trauma, you can't remember. Retrograde amnesia, on the other hand, is the loss of memory for events that occurred prior to the trauma. People with retrograde amnesia cannot remember some or even all of their past. So, and this is the most common amnesia I think that we recall is losing memories of your past. So that's retrograde amnesia. Let's look at the term suggestibility. Suggestibility refers to the tendency of individuals to accept and incorporate suggestions or misleading information into their own memories or beliefs. This phenomenon plays a crucial role in how people recall past events. So this is, just for example, this is one of the difficulties of eyewitness accounts. The eyewitness might have been influenced by other sources, such as the media, which affects how they recall what they witnessed. And I think you'll read more about the difficulties of eyewitness accounts in your textbook, but just remember that they're not always very reliable. They can be influenced by a lot of different things. The Innocence Project is an organization that works to free those who have been wrongfully convicted. Check out the link below, specifically discusses the problem with eyewitness misidentification. It's through the Innocence Project. Again, another concern regarding eyewitness testimony would be the misinformation effect, which holds that after exposure to additional and possibly inaccurate information, a person may misremember the original event. So an event occurs and then the person is exposed to more information, and that can confuse the original memory and make you misremember things. The below video provides a good example of the misinformation effect if you'd like to check that out. If you do watch the video, take note of how the words used by the interviewer affect the witness's response. You'll also see that how we're asked a question can definitely affect our memory of how we answer a question. False memories. False memories are memories that seem real but are not based in reality. Everyone has false memories at times because the human brain doesn't usually record events with the detailed accuracy of a device. They can range from harmless childhood memories, like memories of a day at the park, to traumatic events or even false confessions of crime. Most people have some memory distortions. We're not perfect, of course, but trauma, pressure from others, stress, and mental health issues can increase the likelihood of memory distortions. Memories can also be repressed and appear later, and such memories could be false or they could be true. So let's look at forgetting. Again, our brains aren't perfect. We're not perfect, and so we forget a lot. There are several reasons why we forget. Encoding failure occurs when information fails to be effectively transferred and stored in the memory system due to insufficient or inadequate processing during the encoding stage. If you go back to the definition of memory, it is the process of what's on the left. We encode, we store it, and then we try and retrieve it. So something goes wrong in the encoding, we're not acquiring the information correctly, then obviously we're not going to remember it. Transience is another reason for forgetting. It means that memories simply fade over time. Absent-mindedness, which describes lapses in memory caused by breaks in attention or focus being somewhere else. For example, I walk into the kitchen to get a pair of scissors, but I stop to talk to my son along the way. By the time I get to the kitchen, I've forgotten what I went in there for. That's a common occurrence that I'm sure all of us have experienced, but that's simply absent-mindedness. I get distracted by something else and the memory goes away. Blocking, the inability to access stored information. For example, you studied for a test, but you're now unable to retrieve the answer to one of the essay questions. For some reason, you've blocked it. You're just not able to access it. And I'm sure we've probably all had that experience where you study and yet you can't get it when you're in the midst of the test. It could be due to stress or other factors. Misattribution involves assigning a memory to the wrong source. In other words, mistaking fantasy for reality or incorrectly remembering that a friend told you a bit of trivia that you actually read about in a newspaper. So again, simply assigning a memory to the wrong source. I think I heard it from a friend, but I actually read it. That's a type of forgetting. Bias, your feelings and view of the world can actually distort your memory of past events. An example would be the hindsight bias, which a couple breaks up and you say, I knew months ago that would happen. So you didn't really know months ago that that would happen, but in hindsight, you feel like you knew that. You remember that event incorrectly. So interference. This is also a cause for forgetting, and there are two types of interference. Let's look at the diagram on the left at proactive interference. This is the phenomenon of how old memories interfere with new memories. What you already know interferes with what you are currently trying to learn. For example, incorrectly writing the date during the first new months of a year, confusion when using foreign currency, inability to remember someone's new phone number. So it's the inability to remember new information, or that ability is disrupted by old information. On the other hand, retroactive interference is the interference of new memories interfering with old memories. New memories interfere with the retrieval of your old memories. For example, forgetting the address of your previous location and forgetting the names of the coworkers in your previous workplace. Those are the examples of proactive and retroactive interference, which again are reasons that we forget. Thank you for listening as always, and be sure to let me know if you have any questions.